You made a fool of yourself.
The first time my wife called me incapable in bed in front of her entire family, I was holding a burnt hot dog and wondering if the potato salad had gone bad. The second time, I started planning her destruction. "Oh, Nick's harmless," Erin laughed, her wine glass catching the afternoon sunlight in her parents' pristine backyard. "He couldn't satisfy a woman if his life depended on it. Trust me, I'd know." The circle of her relatives erupted in that particular brand of cruel laughter that comes from people who've never had to work for anything in their lives. Her sister Tina nearly choked on her mimosa. Her work friend Lila was already pulling out her phone to document the moment for social media. Even Erin's mother, that walking advertisement for cosmetic surgery, managed a smirk between sips of her third martini. I raised my charred hot dog like a toast. "Message received, honey." Inside my head, a different conversation was happening. First time I wondered if I should have just married my wrench set. At least tools are honest about what they're designed to do. My name is Nick Kavanaugh, and I fix things for a living. Cars mostly, but also lawnmowers, motorcycles, and the occasional marriage. At least I used to think I could fix marriages. Turns out, some things are broken by design. I'm 38 years old, owner of Kavanaugh Auto Repair on the south side of Millbrook, New York. It's not much to look at. A converted gas station with 2 bays and an office that smells like coffee and motor oil. But it's mine. Bought it 5 years ago when the previous owner decided Florida was more appealing than upstate winters. Can't say I blame him. Erin works in human resources at the hospital. She's good at it, probably because she's had plenty of practice managing people she considers beneath her. We've been married 16 years, together since college. 2 kids, Maddie, 17 and sharp as a tack, and Eli, 15 and already smarter with computers than most adults. The party was supposed to be a celebration. Erin's parents had just returned from their 3rd European vacation this year, and apparently that required gathering the entire family to hear about their adventures in overpriced restaurants and boutique hotels. I'd tried to beg off, claiming work, but Erin had insisted. "It's important to me that you're there," she'd said that morning, adjusting her makeup in the bathroom mirror. Family means everything. Now, watching her perform for her audience at my expense, I was beginning to understand what she really meant. I was the court jester, there to make everyone else feel better about their own lives. Brandon O'Malley arrived fashionably late because of course he did. Bran, as he insisted everyone call him, had been the star quarterback at Millbrook High 25 years ago. These days, he sold luxury cars at a dealership that specialized in convincing people they needed vehicles they couldn't afford. He still wore his Letterman jacket to high school reunions. "Sorry I'm late, folks," he announced, strutting across the perfectly manicured lawn like he owned it. "Had to close a deal on a beautiful BMW. Client couldn't resist once I worked my magic." He was wearing a gold chain that caught the light when he moved, and his hair was styled with enough product to waterproof a boat. Everything about him screamed trying too hard, but Erin's family ate it up like he was serving caviar instead of BS. "Bran," Erin practically squealed, jumping up from her chair. "I'm so glad you could make it." She hugged him, and I watched his hand settle on the small of her back, fingers splaying possessively. The hug lasted exactly 3 seconds too long. Maddie, sitting on the porch steps with her phone, caught my eye and made a face that perfectly captured my own thoughts about the situation. "Nick," Bran said, turning to me with that practiced car salesman smile. "How's business? Still getting your hands dirty?" There was something in his tone, a subtle condescension that made my jaw clench. "Someone has to do the real work," I replied. "Can't all sell dreams to people who can't afford them." The smile flickered for just a moment. "Well, not everyone has the vision to see beyond their current circumstances. That's what separates the successful from the comfortable, like it was a disease." Erin shot me a warning look, the kind that said, "Behave yourself without words." I'd been getting a lot of those looks lately, more than usual anyway. The afternoon dragged on with the usual family dynamics. Erin's father held court with stories about his golf game and stock portfolio. Her mother dispensed advice about home decorating and the importance of maintaining standards. Tina complained about her husband's lack of ambition while simultaneously bragging about their recent kitchen renovation. And through it all, I watched Bran work the crowd like a politician at a fundraiser. He had a compliment for everyone, a joke ready for every lull in conversation. He was good at it, I had to admit. The kind of smooth operator who could sell ice to Eskimos and make them feel grateful for the privilege. But I also noticed other things. The way he kept gravitating toward Erin, how she lit up whenever he spoke to her. The inside jokes that seemed to have developed between them, the casual touches that lingered just a beat too long. Nick looks like he's plotting something, Lila observed, pointing her phone in my direction. Very brooding and mysterious. He's probably thinking about carburetors, Aaron said dismissively. That's about as deep as his thoughts get. More laughter. I was really starting to hate that sound. Actually, I said, standing up and brushing hot dog crumbs off my jeans, I was thinking about loyalty. Funny how rare it's become. The conversation stopped. For a moment, the only sound was the neighbor's sprinkler system cycling through its programmed routine. What's that supposed to mean? Erin asked, her voice sharp. Nothing specific, I replied. Just a general observation about the state of the world. People don't seem to value commitment the way they used to. Bran cleared his throat. Well, I think loyalty is earned, not given. Some people expect it without providing any reason to deserve it. I looked at him for a long moment, noting the challenge in his eyes. Interesting perspective. I always thought marriage vows were pretty clear about that sort of thing. Oh, for God's sake, Aaron's mother interjected. Why does everything have to be so serious? We're supposed to be having fun. You're right, I said. Fun is exactly what this is. I walked over to the cooler and grabbed a beer, taking my time to pop it open. When I turned around, I caught Bran whispering something in Aaron's ear. Whatever he said made her giggle like a teenager. That's when I knew for certain what I'd been suspecting for weeks. The late nights at work events. The new clothes and sudden interest in the gym. The way she'd started keeping her phone face down and taking calls in the other room. All the little signs I'd been trying to ignore because I didn't want to believe what they were telling me. Maddie appeared at my elbow, her dark hair falling across her face in that way that reminded me of Aaron when we first met, before the ambition and social climbing had hardened her into someone I barely recognized. Dad, she said quietly, can we go home? This is getting weird. I looked around the party at these people who had never accepted me as anything more than a necessary accessory to their daughter's life. At my wife, who was now openly flirting with her high school crush while her family watched approvingly. At Bran, who was enjoying every moment of his little performance. Yeah, kiddo, I said. I think we can go. But as I gathered my keys and made polite excuses about early morning appointments, I realized something had shifted inside me. The humiliation was still there, burning in my chest like acid reflux. But underneath it was something else, something colder and more patient. I'd spent 16 years trying to be the husband Aaron wanted, the son-in-law her parents could tolerate, the reliable guy who fixed things and didn't make waves. And what had it gotten me? A front row seat to my own humiliation. That night, after Aaron came home smelling like wine and someone else's cologne, I moved my clothes to the spare bedroom. I left a note on the kitchen counter that said simply, I'll be staying at the shop for a while. We need to talk, but not tonight. I didn't wait for her response. I had work to do. 3 days later, I was elbow deep in the engine of a 1987 Chevy pickup when my daughter found me. The truck belonged to Mrs. Henderson from Oak Street, and it had been making a sound like a dying walrus every time she tried to start it. Simple fix, really. Just a worn belt and some wishful thinking. But I was taking my time with it. Keeping my hands busy helped quiet the noise in my head. Dad? Maddie's voice echoed in the garage bay. You in here? Under the hood, I called back, not looking up from the engine. What's up, kiddo? She walked around to where she could see me, her school backpack slung over one shoulder. Eli was with her as usual. My son had inherited my mechanical aptitude, but applied it to electronics instead of engines. The kid could make a computer do things that probably violated several laws of physics. Mom's been acting weird, Maddie said without preamble. She'd always been direct, a trait that served her well, but occasionally got her in trouble at school. Weirder than usual, I mean. I straightened up, wiping my hands on a shop rag. Weird how? She keeps getting phone calls and then going outside to talk, Eli chimed in. And yesterday I saw her putting on makeup at like 10 o'clock at night. Said she was going to a work meeting. What kind of work meeting happens at 10 p.m., Maddie added. And why did she need lipstick for it? Smart kids. Too smart, maybe. I'd been hoping to keep them out of this mess, at least until I figured out what I was dealing with. But Erin wasn't exactly being subtle about her extracurricular activities. Also, Eli continued, pulling out his phone, who's the guy with the gold chain? He's been liking all her Instagram posts. He showed me the screen. There was Brand's profile picture, all teeth and hair gel, under a photo Erin had posted of her coffee that morning. The comment read, "Beautiful as always." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. How long has this been going on? Few weeks, maybe? Eli shrugged. I started noticing after that party at Grandma's. He comments on everything she posts, and she always hearts his comments right away like she's waiting for them. Maddie crossed her arms, a gesture that made her look exactly like her mother when she was building up to an argument. "Dad, what's going on? And don't say nothing because we're not stupid." I looked at my kids, really looked at them. Maddie with her fierce loyalty and quick temper. Eli with his quiet intelligence and talent for seeing patterns others missed. They deserved better than lies, even comfortable ones. "Your mother and I are having some problems," I said finally. "Adult problems. But whatever happens between us, it doesn't change how we feel about you two. You know that, right?" "Is she cheating on you?" Maddie asked bluntly. The question hung in the air like exhaust fumes. I could have deflected, changed the subject, protected them from the ugly truth a little longer. But they'd already figured it out on their own. They were just waiting for me to confirm what they could see. "I think so," I said, "but I need to be sure before I do anything about it." Eli looked up from his phone. "Want me to find out for sure?" "What do you mean?" He gave me a look that was probably supposed to be innocent, but missed the mark by several miles. I mean, hypothetically, if someone wanted to know what was really going on, there are ways to find out. Digital ways. "Eli, I'm not talking about anything illegal," he said quickly. "But Mom uses the same password for everything, and she has automatic cloud backup turned on. If someone happened to know her password, and if that someone accidentally accessed her backed up text messages—" "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "I'm not dragging you into this." "We're already in it, Dad," Maddie pointed out. "We live there too. We see what's happening." She was right, but that didn't make it easier. I'd been trying to handle this quietly, figure out my next move without involving anyone else. But Erin wasn't giving me that luxury. "Look," I said, "let me deal with this my way, okay? I need you two to stay out of it for now." They exchanged a look that told me they had no intention of staying out of anything, but they nodded anyway. After they left, I went back to Mrs. Henderson's truck, but my mind was elsewhere. That evening, I drove to the Rusty Tap, a bar on the east side of town that catered to people who worked with their hands and didn't have pretensions about it. The owner, Jimmy Torino, had been a customer of mine for years. The beer was cold, the music wasn't too loud, and nobody asked questions they didn't want answered. My best friend Sam was already there, holding down our usual spot at the end of the bar. Sam Riley used to be a cop before he decided he preferred fixing motorcycles to dealing with people's problems. We'd known each other since high school, and he was one of the few people who'd seen me through all the changes, marriage, kids, business ownership, and now whatever this was turning into. "You look like hell," he said by way of greeting. "Feel worse," I replied, signaling Jimmy for a beer. "Erin's having an affair." Sam nodded like I'd told him the weather forecast. "With the car salesman? You knew?" I had suspicions. Saw them together at Romano's last week. Looked pretty cozy for a business meeting. Romano's was an Italian restaurant on the other side of town, the kind of place people went when they wanted to be seen, or when they thought they wouldn't be. "Why didn't you tell me?" Sam shrugged. "What was I going to say? Hey, Nick, I think your wife's cheating on you. You would have figured it out eventually. And if I was wrong, you'd have spent weeks wondering and driving yourself crazy." He had a point. Sam had always been practical that way, which was probably why he'd made a good cop. He dealt with facts, not speculation. "So what are you going to do about it?" he asked. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to confront her, get it all out in the open. But another part of me wants to see how far she'll go. And then," I took a long pull from my beer, considering, "then I guess we'll see what 16 years of marriage is really worth." We drank in comfortable silence for a while, watching the local news on the TV above the bar. A story about the upcoming Millbrook Harvest Festival. Something about road construction on Route 9. The usual small-town concerns that seemed incredibly trivial compared to the wreckage of my personal life. "You know what the worst part is?" I said eventually. "What's that?" "She humiliated me in front of her entire family, and they loved it, like it was entertainment." Sam nodded. "Erin's people never liked you much." "No, they didn't. But I thought she did. I thought that mattered more. Maybe it used to." When I got back to the shop, I found Mrs. Doss waiting for me in the parking lot. Eleanor Doss was my 73-year-old neighbor, a retired librarian who knew everything that happened in Millbrook about 5 minutes after it occurred. She had a network of information that would make the CIA jealous. "Nicholas," she said, approaching with her purposeful stride. "We need to talk." "Evening, Mrs. Doss. What can I do for you?" "It's what I can do for you, dear. I've been watching your house." I blinked. "You've been watching my house?" "Someone needs to," she said matter-of-factly. "And since you've been staying here at the shop, I took it upon myself. That flashy man with the expensive car has been visiting quite regularly, usually around lunchtime, sometimes in the evening." My jaw tightened. "How regularly?" "3 times this week alone. And that friend of Aaron's, the one with all the social media nonsense, she was there yesterday. They were taking pictures. Lila, of course. Aaron's personal documentarian, always ready with a camera and a complete lack of discretion. "Mrs. Doss," I said carefully, "I appreciate you looking out for me, but don't you dare apologize for her behavior," she interrupted. "I've been married 52 years, Nicholas. I know what a cheating spouse looks like, and I know what it does to a good man. Your Erin is making a fool of herself, and she's trying to make one of you in the process." The bluntness of it hit me like a slap. Mrs. Doss had never been one to sugarcoat things, but hearing it stated so plainly made it real in a way that all my suspicions hadn't. "What do you think I should do?" She studied me with sharp blue eyes that had seen 8 decades of human foolishness. "That depends. Do you want to save your marriage, or do you want to save your dignity? Can't I have both? Not with a woman who thinks humiliating you in public is acceptable behavior. Some people can be redeemed, Nicholas. Others just need to learn that actions have consequences." After she left, I sat in my office staring at the paperwork scattered across my desk. Invoices, repair estimates, parts orders, the mundane details of a life I'd built one day at a time. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. I fixed things that were broken, and people paid me for the service. Simple transaction, clear expectations. Marriage, apparently, was more complicated. My phone buzzed with a text message. "Aaron, we need to talk. This silent treatment is childish." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, "I'm not the one who needs to explain anything." Her response came immediately. "What's that supposed to mean?" I turned off the phone without answering. Let her wonder, let her worry. For 16 years, I'd been the one doing the worrying, trying to figure out how to make her happy, how to be worthy of her attention. Maybe it was time she did some of the work for a change. But as I settled into the narrow cot I'd set up in the office, I couldn't shake Mrs. Doss's question. Did I want to save my marriage, or did I want to save my dignity? The answer was becoming clearer every day. The next morning brought a revelation that changed everything. I was opening the shop when Eli showed up on his bike, looking like he hadn't slept much. "Dad, I need to show you something," he said, pulling out his phone with shaking hands. "Eli, I told you. Just look, okay? Please." He handed me the phone, and I found myself staring at a screenshot of a text conversation. Aaron's name was at the top, and the messages made my stomach drop. "Aaron, I can't keep pretending with Nick. This is eliminating me. Bran, then stop pretending. Leave him. Aaron, it's complicated. The kids, the house, everything. Bran, I love you more than I ever loved anyone, more than you ever loved Nick. Aaron, you know I feel the same way. I should have married you instead of him." The phone trembled in my hands. Seeing it in black and white, spelled out in her own words, was different from suspecting. This was proof. This was betrayal documented and time-stamped. "There's more," Eli said quietly. "Pictures, voice messages. I can show you." "No." I handed the phone back to him. "I've seen enough." But I hadn't really. The anger was building inside me like pressure in a boiler, and I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. "Actually, yes, show me everything." For the next 20 minutes, my 15-year-old son walked me through the digital evidence of my wife's affair. Text messages that went back months, photos that made me sick to my stomach, voice messages where she talked about leaving me, about how much happier she was with Bran, about how I'd never been able to satisfy her the way he did. The worst part wasn't the sexual content, it was the contempt, the way she talked about me like I was an inconvenience, a problem to be solved. 16 years of marriage, and this was what it had meant to her. "Dad?" Eli's voice seemed to come from very far away. "You okay?" I realized I was gripping the edge of my workbench hard enough to leave marks. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "I will be." I straightened up, my mind already working through possibilities. Eli, I need you to do something for me. And I need you to be very careful about it. What? I need copies of everything you just showed me, but I need them obtained legally. Can you do that? He nodded. She gave me her password for the family Netflix account. Same password works for her cloud storage. Technically, she authorized me to access her accounts. Smart kid. Too smart, maybe, but that was a problem for another day. And Eli? Not a word to your mother about this, or your sister, not yet. This stays between us until I figure out what to do. Are you going to divorce her? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on confirming what I suspected that I hadn't thought much about what came next. I don't know, I said honestly, but whatever I do, I'm going to do it right. That afternoon, I drove to Brand's dealership. O'Malley Luxury Motors occupied a prime spot on Route 9, all glass and chrome and promises of a better life through better transportation. Brand's face smiled down from billboards around town, offering deals too good to be true and financing for everyone. I parked across the street and watched for a while. Brand was in his element, working a middle-aged couple who were looking at a red convertible they probably couldn't afford. He was animated, charming, laying on the Irish accent that came and went depending on his audience. The same performance he'd given at the party, just with different stakes. I waited until the couple drove away in their trade-in, no sale apparently, then crossed the street. Nick! Brand's face lit up with that salesman's smile. What brings you to my little corner of paradise? Finally ready to upgrade from that ancient pickup? Just thought I'd stop by, I said, looking around the showroom. See how the other half lives? Well, you picked a good day. I've got some fantastic deals on pre-owned luxury vehicles. Something with a little more class, you know? More appropriate for a successful business owner. There it was again. That subtle condescension wrapped in fake concern. Like he was doing me a favor by pointing out my inadequacies. Actually, I said, I wanted to talk to you about something else. About loyalty. The smile flickered. Loyalty? Yeah, you know, that old-fashioned concept where people honor their commitments. Don't stab their friends in the back. That kind of thing. We were standing next to a silver Mercedes that probably cost more than I made in a year. Bran ran his hand along the hood like he was petting a cat. I'm not sure I follow, he said. Sure you do. You're a smart guy, Bran. Smart enough to know that some things belong to other people. Smart enough to know that taking what isn't yours has consequences. His face was getting red now, the charm slipping. I think you better say what you mean, Nick. I mean that some people think they can take whatever they want just because they want it. Cars, houses, other men's wives, but eventually those people learn that actions have consequences. Are you threatening me? I looked at him for a long moment. This man who was sleeping with my wife and bragging about it in text messages. This overgrown high school quarterback who thought the world owed him whatever he wanted. Not threatening, I said. Just making an observation about how the world works. Then I walked away, but not before accidentally brushing against the Mercedes with my keys. The scratch that appeared along the driver's side door was thin but visible, a perfect line in the expensive paint job. Whoops, I said, not turning around. Guess that's what happens when you play with things that don't belong to you. I could hear Bran shouting behind me, but I didn't stop. I had work to do. That evening, I went back to the Rusty Tap. Sam was there, as usual, but so was half the town. Word travels fast in a place like Millbrook, especially when it involves someone scratching up a luxury car in broad daylight. Heard you had an interesting afternoon, Sam said as I sat down. News travels fast. Bran's been calling everyone he knows, trying to figure out if he can press charges. Seems someone damaged his precious Mercedes. That's terrible, I said, signaling Jimmy for a beer. Vandalism is a serious crime. It is. Of course, it's hard to prove vandalism when there are no witnesses, and the damage could have been accidental. I nodded thoughtfully. Accidents happen, especially when people aren't paying attention to their surroundings. The bar was buzzing with conversation, and I caught fragments of different discussions. Someone's nephew had gotten arrested for drunk driving. The high school football team was having a good season. Mrs. Patterson's cat had gone missing again. And threading through it all, whispers about Nick Cavanaugh and Bran O'Malley and something that had happened at the car dealership. Nick! The voice behind me was sharp, familiar, and angry. I turned to find Erin standing in the doorway, her face flushed with rage. Lila was behind her, phone already out and recording, because of course she was. We need to talk, Erin said. Now. The entire bar went quiet. This was better than cable television, and everyone knew it. Sure, I said, not getting up from my stool. Talk. Not here, outside. I'm comfortable here. But if you have something to say, go ahead and say it. She looked around at the faces watching us, clearly uncomfortable with the audience. But she was committed now, had to follow through. I know what you did today, she said. Maltreating Bran at his workplace, damaging his car. It's pathetic, Nick, even for you. Is it? I took a sip of my beer. I thought it was just an accident. You know how clumsy I can be? This isn't a joke. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm not the one who should be embarrassed. The color drained from her face. She knew that I knew. The question was how much I knew and what I planned to do about it. I don't know what you think you know, she started. I know that you've been lying to me for months, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the quiet bar. I know that you've been sneaking around behind my back, and I know that you think I'm too stupid to figure it out. Nick, please. But here's what you don't know, Aaron. You don't know that I've been watching. You don't know that I've been learning. And you don't know what I'm going to do about it. She stared at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something in her eyes that looked like fear. This isn't over, she said finally. No, I agreed. It's not. She turned and stalked out, Lila trailing behind her like a faithful dog. The bar stayed quiet for another moment, then conversation resumed at twice the previous volume. Well, Sam said, that was entertaining. Just getting started, I replied. And I was. For 16 years, I'd been playing defense, trying to keep Erin happy, trying to be worthy of her attention. But defense doesn't win games. It just delays the inevitable loss. It was time to start playing offense. The Millbrook Harvest Festival happened every October, transforming the town square into a maze of craft booths, food trucks, and carnival games. It was the kind of wholesome community event that looked perfect in the tourism brochures, complete with hay bales and pumpkin displays and a local news crew documenting the festivities. I hadn't planned to go, but Maddie convinced me. She was working a booth for the high school drama club, selling homemade cookies to fund their spring production. Eli was there too, helping the AV club run sound for the main stage. Normal teenage activities that felt surreal given everything else that was happening. Dad, you need to get out of that garage, Maddie had said that morning. When's the last time you did something fun? Fun. The concept seemed foreign, like a word from a language I used to speak but had forgotten. But she was right. I'd been living in a bubble of anger and planning for weeks now, and it wasn't healthy. So I went to the festival, bought overpriced kettle corn, and tried to remember what normal felt like. It was working too, until Bran showed up. He was dressed like he was attending a yacht club regatta instead of a small-town festival. Khakis with a perfect crease, polo shirt that probably cost more than most people's grocery budget, and those leather loafers that had never seen actual work. The gold chain caught the afternoon sunlight as he worked the crowd, shaking hands and slapping backs like he was running for mayor. Nick Kavanaugh. His voice boomed across the square. Fancy meeting you here. I turned to find him approaching with that carnivory smile, and I realized this wasn't a coincidence. He'd come looking for me. Bran, I said evenly, enjoying the festival? Always do. Love supporting the community, you know? Though I have to say, some people in this town have been disappointing me lately. We were standing near the main stage, where a local bluegrass band was setting up their equipment. People were starting to gather around us, sensing drama the way sharks sense blood in the water. Disappointing how? I asked. Oh, you know, petty vandalism, childish behavior, the kind of thing you'd expect from someone who can't handle adult situations like an adult. He was trying to provoke me, get me to lose my temper in front of half the town. It was actually a pretty smart strategy, if you didn't know me very well. That does sound disappointing, I agreed. Of course, some people might say that sleeping with another man's wife is pretty childish behavior too. The crowd around us went dead silent. Even the bluegrass band stopped tuning their instruments. Bran's face went through several interesting color changes. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You're a smart guy, remember? Smart enough to know that some secrets don't stay secret forever. You're making a scene, Nick. Am I? Because it seems to me like you're the one making scenes. At restaurants, at my house, in my wife's bed. Someone in the crowd gasped. I was pretty sure it was Mrs. Patterson, who ran the flower shop and had never missed a good scandal in 60 years of living in Millbrook. Bran stepped closer, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate me. You better watch your mouth. Or what? You'll scratch my car? Oh wait, that's my move. He was getting angry now, the careful composure slipping. You think you're clever, don't you? But you have no idea what you're dealing with. Enlighten me. Erin's leaving you, Nick. She's tired of being married to a grease monkey who can't give her the life she deserves. She wants a real man, not some loser who peaked in high school shop class. The insult was designed to hurt, and it did. But it also did something else. It made me smile. You know what, Bran? You're absolutely right. Erin deserves exactly what she's going to get. I started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and watch your step. These festival grounds can be tricky. Lots of obstacles you might not see coming. I timed it perfectly. As Bran stepped backward, still focused on me and trying to think of a comeback, his expensive loafers hit the edge of the decorative hay bales that surrounded the stage area. He went down hard, arms windmilling, landing in a pile of pumpkins that exploded like orange grenades. The crowd erupted in laughter. Someone, I was pretty sure it was Eli, started clapping. Even the bluegrass band was grinning. Bran struggled to his feet, covered in pumpkin guts and hay, his perfect hair now looking like he'd been electrocuted. His face was purple with rage and embarrassment. "This isn't over," he snarled. "I know," I said. "That's what makes it fun." The local news crew had captured the whole thing on camera. By that evening, footage of Bran's spectacular fall was making the rounds on social media, complete with commentary from people who'd never liked him much to begin with. But Bran wasn't done. 2 days later, he tried a more direct approach. I was working late at the shop, finishing up a transmission rebuild that had been giving me trouble all week. It was past 9 o'clock, and the building was dark except for the work lights in my bay. That's probably why he thought he could catch me off guard. The first sign of trouble was the sound of breaking glass from the office. I grabbed a tire iron and moved carefully toward the noise, keeping to the shadows. Bran was standing behind my desk, rifling through papers with a flashlight. He'd broken the window to get in, and there was glass scattered across the floor. He was looking for something. Probably evidence that I'd been investigating him and Erin. "Find what you're looking for?" I asked from the doorway. He spun around, the flashlight beam hitting me in the eyes. "Nick, I was just breaking and entering." "Yeah, I can see that." The door was open. I thought something might be wrong. "So you decided to search my desk?" He straightened up, trying to regain his composure. "Look, we need to talk, man to man. I'm listening. This thing with Erin, it's not what you think." "Really? What is it then?" He moved closer, and I could smell booze on his breath. Liquid courage, probably. "It's love, Nick. Real love, the kind you never gave her. And you decided to express this love by sneaking around behind my back?" We tried to stay away from each other. But some things are bigger than marriage vows or social conventions. Some things are destiny. I almost laughed. "Destiny? That's what you're calling it? You wouldn't understand. You've never felt anything that powerful." "You're right," I said. "I've never felt the urge to destroy someone else's family for my own entertainment. It's not entertainment, it's..." He never finished the sentence, because that's when Sam stepped out of the shadows behind him. My old friend was holding a baseball bat and wearing the kind of smile that had made suspects confess back when he was still wearing a badge. "Evening, Bran," Sam said pleasantly. "Funny, finding you here." Bran's face went white. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can. But first, let's talk about property damage. That window's going to cost money to replace." "I'll pay for it." "Damn right you will. And then you're going to walk out of here and never come back. Because next time, I might not be in such a good mood." Bran looked between us, calculating his chances. They weren't good, and he knew it. "This isn't over," he said, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. "Actually," I said, "I think it is. At least the part where you get to play the sufferer." After he left, Sam and I swept up the glass and boarded up the window. It was after midnight by the time we finished. "How'd you know to come by?" I asked. "Mrs. Doss called me. Said she saw someone sneaking around the building." Of course she had. My guardian angel in sensible shoes and a cardigan. "Sam, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Shoot. Am I handling this wrong? Should I just file for divorce and be done with it?" He considered the question while he packed his tools. "You could do that. Probably should if you want to take the high road. But sometimes the high road just means you get a better view of people walking all over you." "So what do you think I should do?" "I think," Sam said, "that some people need to learn that actions have consequences. And I think you're just the guy to teach them." He was right. Aaron and Bran had spent months making a fool of me, humiliating me in front of my family and friends, treating me like I was too stupid to know what was happening right under my nose. It was time to show them just how wrong they were. The plan came together over the next 2 weeks, piece by piece, like a complex engine rebuild. Every component had to fit perfectly, work in harmony with the others, and serve the larger purpose. I'd learned patience from 16 years of marriage and precision from 20 years of fixing things that other people had broken. Erin was getting sloppy. The affair had made her confident, reckless. She was staying out later, making less effort to hide her activities. She'd even started bringing Bran around the house when she thought I wouldn't be there, not knowing that Mrs. Doss was keeping a detailed log of his visits. Tuesday, 2:15 p.m., she reported during one of our regular briefings. Stayed until 4:30, left through the back door like some kind of criminal. What about Lila? Oh, that one was there yesterday with her camera. Took pictures of them in the kitchen, very romantic. Made me sick to my stomach. Mrs. Doss had become my unofficial intelligence officer, and she was good at it. 73 years of observing human nature had given her insights that would make a behavioral analyst jealous. They're planning something, she continued. I can tell by the way they're acting, all secretive and excited like children planning mischief. She was right. I could feel it too, a change in the atmosphere whenever I talked to Erin. She was building up to something, some kind of confrontation or announcement that she thought would catch me off guard. But I had plans of my own. The first step was Bran's ex-wife. Patricia O'Malley had divorced him 3 years earlier, citing irreconcilable differences in the court documents. But Mrs. Doss's research network had uncovered the real story. Bran had cheated on Patricia with a customer, been caught, and lost half his assets in the settlement. Patricia worked as a real estate agent now, successful enough to drive a BMW and live in one of the nicer neighborhoods. More importantly, she had no love lost for her ex-husband and his habit of destroying other people's marriages. I found her at an open house on Elm Street, showing a colonial to a young couple with more enthusiasm than budget. She was professional, polished, and had the kind of sharp intelligence that Bran had probably found threatening. Mrs. O'Malley? I'm Nick Kavanaugh. I was wondering if I could have a word with you. She studied me with calculating eyes. You're the mechanic, the one with the cheating wife. Word really did travel fast in Millbrook. That's me. What do you want? Information. And maybe a little payback? She smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. I'm listening. 20 minutes later, we had an understanding. Patricia had been documenting Bran's activities for months, partly out of curiosity and partly because she suspected he was hiding assets that should have been included in their divorce settlement. She had photographs, credit card statements, even recordings of phone calls where he bragged about his conquests. He never learns, she said, handing me a manila envelope. Same patterns, same mistakes. He thinks he's irresistible, but he's just predictable. Why are you helping me? Because he destroyed my marriage, and now he's destroying yours. Someone needs to hold him accountable. The envelope contained everything I needed and more. Photos of Bran and Erin at restaurants, hotels, even at my own house. Financial records showing expensive gifts he'd bought her. Text messages where he talked about getting rid of the husband problem. But the real treasure was at the bottom of the stack. A recording of Bran talking to one of his salesmen about his system for seducing married women. He was proud of it, describing his techniques like a carnivore sharing hunting tips. The key, his voice said through this phone speaker, is to make them feel like their husbands don't appreciate them. Once you plant that seed, the rest is easy. They practically throw themselves at you. Patricia had been right. He was predictable. That evening, I put the second phase of my plan into motion. Eli had been monitoring Erin's social media activity, tracking her posts and interactions. He'd identified patterns in her behavior, times when she was most likely to be online and responsive. She always checks Instagram around 9 p.m., he reported. Posts something, then spends an hour responding to comments. Perfect. Can you make sure this gets seen by the right people? I showed him the photos Patricia had given me, nothing explicit, but clearly intimate. Bran and Erin holding hands at a restaurant, kissing in a parking lot, walking into a hotel together. Dad, are you sure about this? She made our private business public at that party. Turnabout is fair play. Eli nodded and got to work. Within an hour, the photos were circulating through Millbrook's social networks like wildfire. Not posted directly, that would have been too obvious, but shared through private messages, forwarded through group chats, discussed in comment threads. By the next morning, half the town had seen them. The reaction was swift and brutal. Erin's phone started ringing at 7 a.m. and didn't stop. Friends, family, co-workers, all wanting to know if the rumors were true. Her carefully constructed image as the wronged wife was crumbling in real time. I watched it unfold from the coffee shop across from the hospital where she worked. Through the window, I could see her in the parking lot, pacing back and forth while she talked on her phone. Her face was red, her gestures animated. She was losing control. Bran was having his own problems. Word had reached his dealership, and customers were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. It's hard to sell family cars when you're known for destroying families. His sales manager called an emergency meeting, and I could see them through the showroom windows, having what looked like a very serious conversation. But I wasn't done yet. That afternoon, I visited the Millbrook Community Center, where Erin's mother was hosting her weekly bridge club. 12 of the town's most influential women, all gathered around card tables and sharing gossip along with their refreshments. "Mrs. Patterson," I said, approaching the table where Erin's mother was dealing cards. "I was hoping I could speak with you for a moment." Eleanor Patterson, not to be confused with Mrs. Patterson from the flower shop, looked up with barely concealed disdain. She'd never approved of her daughter's choice in husbands, and 16 years hadn't softened her opinion. "Nicholas, how unexpected. I wanted to apologize for any embarrassment this situation might be causing your family." The other women at the table had stopped their conversations to listen. This was better entertainment than their usual discussions of garden club politics and charity fundraiser drama. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean," Mrs. Patterson said stiffly. "Of course not. I just wanted you to know that I hold no ill will toward Erin. People make mistakes when they're unhappy. Though I do think it's sad when those mistakes become so public." I let the word hang in the air for a moment, then continued. "I hope you'll let her know that I wish her well. She and Mr. O'Malley deserve each other." Then I left, knowing that within an hour, every woman in that room would be on the phone sharing the conversation with their own networks. By evening, the story would have reached every household in Millbrook. The beauty of it was that I hadn't said anything untrue or even particularly harsh. I'd simply acknowledged what everyone already knew and wished them well. But in the context of small-town social dynamics, it was devastating. Erin called me that night, her voice shaking with rage. "How dare you?" she said without preamble. "How dare you humiliate me like this?" "I'm not sure what you mean," I replied calmly. "I haven't done anything but wish you happiness." "Don't play dumb, Nick. I know you're behind this. The photos, the gossip, all of it." "People talk, Erin, especially when you give them something interesting to talk about." "This is maltreatment. It's consequences," I interrupted. "Something you should have considered before you decided to make our marriage a public joke." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller. "Nick, we need to talk. Really talk. This has gotten out of hand." "Has it? Because from where I'm sitting, things are just getting started." "What do you want?" It was a good question. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? Or just the satisfaction of watching her face the same humiliation she'd put me through? "I want you to understand what it feels like," I said finally, "to have your private life dissected in public, to be the subject of whispered conversations and pitying looks, to know that everyone in town is talking about what a fool you are." "I never meant—" "Yes, you did. You meant every word you said at that party. You meant every lie you told, every secret meeting, every moment you made me look like an idiot who didn't know his own wife was cheating on him." She started to cry then, but I felt no sympathy. These weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of someone who'd been outplayed and didn't like the feeling. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now you get to find out how the story ends," I said, and hung up. But I already knew how it would end. I'd been planning the finale for weeks, and it was going to be spectacular. The courthouse steps were the perfect stage for what I had planned. Public enough to ensure an audience, formal enough to lend gravity to the proceedings, and symbolic enough to make the point I wanted to make. Justice, after all, should be seen to be done. I'd been preparing for this moment for 3 weeks, ever since Patricia O'Malley had provided the final piece of evidence I needed. Bran's own words, recorded during what he thought was a private conversation, describing in detail how he'd seduced my wife and planned to eliminate the husband problem permanently. The divorce hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Thursday. Aaron had filed first, trying to control the narrative, claiming irreconcilable differences and asking for spousal support. Her lawyer was Richard Chambers, a smooth operator who specialized in making cheating spouses look like sufferers of circumstance. I'd hired Janet Morrison, a former prosecutor who'd built a second career destroying unfaithful partners in divorce court. She was expensive, but Patricia's evidence made the case a sure thing. "Are you ready for this?" Janet asked, as we climbed the courthouse steps. "Once we play that recording, there's no going back." "I've been ready for months," I replied. Erin was already there with her lawyer looking pale but determined. She'd dressed carefully for the occasion. Conservative suit, minimal makeup, the picture of a wronged wife seeking justice. Bran was nowhere to be seen, which was probably smart on his part. But I'd made sure he'd be there anyway. The hearing itself was almost anticlimactic. Erin's lawyer presented their case first, painting a picture of a marriage destroyed by my inability to provide emotional and financial security. I was portrayed as a man who'd let himself go, who'd stopped trying to make his wife happy, who'd driven her into the arms of another man through neglect and indifference. It was a good performance, and it might have worked if I hadn't been holding a recording of her lover bragging about his seduction techniques. When it was our turn, Janet stood up with the confidence of someone holding 4 aces. "Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence that will put this case in a very different light." She played the recording for the court. Bran's voice filled the room, describing his system for targeting married women, his techniques for manipulation, his pride in destroying marriages for sport, and then the coup de grace, his detailed account of seducing Erin, complete with her enthusiastic participation and their plans for my elimination. The color drained from Erin's face as she listened to her lover describe their affair in clinical carnivory terms. This wasn't the romantic narrative she'd constructed in her mind. This was the testimony of a serial cheater who saw her as just another conquest. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Janet continued, "we have documentation showing that Mrs. Kavanaugh has been transferring marital assets to her paramour, including funds from accounts that were supposed to be held in trust for the children's education." That was news to me, but Janet had done her homework. The financial records showed a pattern of gifts and loans to Bran that totaled nearly $30,000. Erin's lawyer tried to object, to spin the evidence, to salvage something from the wreckage. But it was too late. The judge had heard enough. "I've seen a lot of divorce cases," Judge Morrison said, "but this level of deception and financial misconduct is unusual, even for this court. Mrs. Kavanaugh, you'll be lucky if you don't face criminal charges." When we walked out of the courthouse, Erin was in tears, and her lawyer was already distancing himself from the case. I'd won everything: the house, custody of the kids, and enough evidence to ensure she'd never see a penny of spousal support. But I still wasn't done. The crowd that had gathered outside the courthouse was larger than I'd expected. Word had spread through Millbrook's gossip network, and it seemed like half the town had shown up to watch the drama unfold. Mrs. Doss was there, of course, along with most of my customers and half the regulars from the Rusty Tap. And there, pushing through the crowd with desperation written all over his face, was Bran O'Malley. "Erin?" he called out, trying to reach her. "Wait, we need to talk." She turned to look at him, and for the first time, I saw her really see him. Not the romantic figure she'd built up in her mind, but the carnivory car salesman who'd used her for entertainment and bragged about it to his friends. "Don't," she said, backing away from him. "Just don't." But Bran wasn't giving up that easily. His world was collapsing too. The recording had already made its way to his employer, and word was that O'Malley Luxury Motors was looking for a new sales manager. He needed Erin to stick to their plan, to run away with him and start over somewhere else. "You can't let him win," Bran said, grabbing her arm. "We had a plan. We were going to be together. Let go of me." "I love you, Erin. I've always loved you." That's when I stepped forward. I'd been watching from the courthouse steps, enjoying the show, but this had gone far enough. "She asked you to let go," I said. Bran spun around, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "This is all your fault. You ruined everything." "I didn't ruin anything. I just made sure everyone knew what you really are." He lunged at me then, probably thinking he could salvage his reputation by winning a fight in front of the whole town. It was a stupid move, but desperate people make stupid decisions. I sidestepped easily. 16 years of marriage to Erin had taught me to avoid wild swings, and Bran's momentum carried him straight into the courthouse's decorative fountain. The splash was audible from 50 feet away. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Someone, I was pretty sure it was Eli, started filming with his phone. Bran struggled to his feet, soaking wet and covered in fountain algae, looking like a drowned rat in an expensive suit. "This isn't over," he sputtered. "Actually," I said, "it is." And it was. By the end of the week, Bran had been fired from the dealership and was facing a lawsuit from Patricia for violating their divorce agreement. Erin had moved in with her sister and was working at a call center in Albany, the only job she could find after her professional reputation was destroyed. But the real finale came 3 days later at the Rusty Tap. I hadn't expected them to come to the bar. After everything that had happened, after the public humiliation and legal destruction, I figured Erin and Bran would have the sense to leave town quietly and start over somewhere else. But desperation makes people do stupid things. And they were both desperate now. It was a Friday night, and the Rusty Tap was packed with the usual crowd. Sam was there, along with most of my regular customers and half the guys from the volunteer fire department. The atmosphere was celebratory, word of my courtroom victory had spread, and everyone wanted to buy me a drink. I was enjoying the attention, I'll admit. For months, I'd been the subject of pitying looks and whispered conversations. Now I was the guy who'd outplayed the players, who'd turned the tables on the people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. That's when they walked in. The conversation stopped like someone had thrown a switch. Erin looked terrible. Pale, thin, wearing clothes that had seen better days. Bran was with her, but he looked even worse. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by the desperate energy of a man with nothing left to lose. They made their way to my table, and I could feel the entire bar holding its breath. "Nick," Erin said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not here. Outside." I looked around at the faces watching us, at the phones already coming out to record whatever was about to happen. "I'm comfortable here, but if you have something to say, go ahead and say it." Bran stepped forward, trying to summon some of his old confidence. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you're so smart." "I don't think I'm smart," I replied. "I just think you're stupid. You destroyed our lives. I documented your choices. There's a difference." Erin was crying now, but they weren't the manipulative tears she'd used during our marriage. These were tears of genuine despair, of someone who'd lost everything and was just beginning to understand why. "I made a mistake," she said. "I know that now. But we have children together, Nick. We have a history. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means you should have thought about that before you decided to humiliate me in front of your family." I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. You meant every word. And even if you didn't, you spent months proving you meant them with your actions. Bran was getting agitated, his hands clenching and unclenching. You can't just destroy people's lives because your feelings got hurt. "Watch me." That's when he snapped. All the frustration and rage and humiliation boiled over, and he came at me across the table. But I was ready for him. I'd been ready for weeks. I stood up as he lunged, letting his own momentum carry him past me. He crashed into the empty chairs behind me, going down in a tangle of wood and chrome. The sound was tremendous in the enclosed space of the bar. The crowd erupted in cheers and laughter. Sam was on his feet, ready to help if needed, but it wasn't necessary. Bran was down and wasn't getting up anytime soon. "You want to know what your problem is, Bran?" I said, standing over him. "You think life is a game where the rules don't apply to you. But every game has consequences, and you just learned what yours are." I turned to Erin, who was staring at her lover with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. "And you. You thought you could trade up, find someone who'd give you the life you thought you deserved. But you picked a loser, Erin. A professional loser who destroys everything he touches." "Nick, please." "I'm not done. You want to know what the real tragedy is? I loved you. For 16 years, I loved you more than anything in the world. I would have done anything to make you happy, but it was never enough, was it? Because the problem wasn't with what I could give you. The problem was with what you were willing to receive." The bar was dead silent now. Even Bran had stopped struggling and was listening. "You threw away a good marriage, a stable home, and a man who would have died for you. And for what? For him?" I gestured at Bran, who was still tangled in the chairs. "A middle-aged car salesman who brags about his conquests and calls you a conquest?" Erin's face crumpled. I know I made a mistake. You made a choice, and choices have consequences. I walked back to my table and picked up my beer. The crowd parted to let me through, and I could feel their eyes on me as I headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Sam called after me. "Home," I said. "To my house with my kids, to start the life I should have been living all along." Behind me, I could hear Bran struggling to his feet and Aaron crying softly. But I didn't turn around. I was done looking backward. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. I could see my house from the parking lot, the lights on in the windows where Maddie and Eli were probably doing homework or watching TV. Normal teenage activities in a normal family home. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. "Dad, did you really throw Bran into a fountain?" I smiled and typed back, "Gravity threw him into a fountain. I just got out of the way." Mom called. She wants to come home. I thought about that for a moment, about forgiveness and second chances and the kind of man I wanted to be. Then I typed, "Home is for people who know how to act like family." She made her choice. "Good," came the reply. "Maddie and I were hoping you'd say that." I put the phone away and started walking home. Behind me, the rusty tap was buzzing with conversation and laughter. The story of this night would be told and retold for years, growing in the telling until it became legend. But I didn't care about the story anymore. I cared about the ending, and this was a good ending. Not perfect, maybe, but good enough. I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or complicated plots. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let other people's choices define your life. Aaron and Bran had each other now, and they deserved each other. They could build whatever life they wanted from the ashes of what they'd destroyed. But they'd build it without me, without my kids, and without the security and stability they'd thrown away for a few months of excitement. As for me, I had work to do. A business to run, children to raise, and a life to rebuild. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, the best things never are. I reached my front door and paused, looking back at the town I'd lived in for 20 years. Tomorrow, people would be talking about what had happened tonight. They'd be analyzing every word, every gesture, every moment of drama. But tonight, I was just going home. I opened the door and stepped inside where Maddie and Eli were waiting with pizza and questions, and the kind of unconditional love that makes everything else worthwhile. "Dad," Maddie said, looking up from her textbook, "are you okay?" "I'm perfect, kiddo. Absolutely perfect." And for the first time in months, I meant it.